I think in the last 5 years, there have been about 100 Premier League teams. These are the top 5 worst ones. Number 5, West Bromich Albion, 2020-21 season. The season that just passed has been an awful season for West Brom. They didn't have the best preparation. The only signings I think they made were Grady Diagana and Carlin Grant. And obviously, that's nowhere near enough if you want to stay up in the Premier League. Looking at their squad isn't that great. Obviously, Matis Pereira had a decent season, but you need more than that to be able to compete at the top level. So going to the first game, they lost 3-0 to Leicester, which is not the worst result in the world because Leicester are a decent side. But the following week, they lost 5-2 to Everton, which was an absolute disgrace because they started the game well. They went 1-0 up, and they looked defensively, well drilled, solid. So I thought that was good. They did that, but from there, they had a player sent off. They had a manager sent off. They conceded goals like crazy, and they were just making some awful, awful decisions on the pitch. An absolutely ridiculous game. And from there, things kind of went downhill. The following week, they ended up drawing to Chelsea, which they were 3-0 up. If you go 3-0 up in a Premier League game, you have to win it. There's just no excuse of not winning a game if you go 3-0 up. And that's what happened. They ended up drawing to Chelsea. I'm not too sure what happened in pre-season because it seems that not enough effort went on the training pitch, to be able to set this team up to have a good season because you shouldn't be conceding 11 goals in your first 3 games in the Premier League. That's not acceptable. And for the whole season, they ended up conceding over 70 goals. Absolutely ridiculous. Number 4, Norwich City, 2019-2020 season. So, for this season, obviously, Norwich had been in the Premier League before, recently, and they were back again. Now, the first game against Liverpool was... Actually, let's go back a bit. In pre-season, they had their 2 best centre-backs injured, so they had to make some signings, and they didn't. So basically, going into the new season, they were completely defenseless. And, the first game being Liverpool, you can't really read too much into being beaten by Liverpool, especially 4-1 away. A bad result, but, obviously it's Liverpool, so, you're not going to take too much out of that. And they actually had a good start to the season. They beat Newcastle after that, and they beat Man City in their first 5 games. So, a really good start to the season. But everything went downhill from there. This team just could not stop conceding goals. It was absolutely ridiculous. Now, there is the excuse that they didn't have fully fit first-team defenders, which is a good excuse, but you should have fixed that in the summer transfer window. You obviously see that your team is deficient in certain areas, so you have to address it. Because what is the point of playing in the Premier League if you don't have a fully fit squad? There's just no point. You're going to get destroyed. So you have to address these issues so that they don't become bigger in the long run. Obviously, Norwich only won 5 games as well, which is surprising because in their first 5 games, they won 2. So for the rest of the season, they only won 3 Premier League games, which is absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, only 26 goals scored. Just a shocking, shocking season. Number 3, Fulham, 2018-19 season. Obviously, Fulham, once again, like Norwich, they've been in the Premier League recently, so they are familiar with this division. But what they're really familiar with is getting relegated because 81 goals conceded in a season. There's an absolute disgrace. What is going on the training field? Now, you might say that these players just aren't good enough, but if you're good enough to get promoted to the Premier League, I think you're good enough to play at the top level. End of story. Now, what happened during this season was Fulham didn't have a good start to the season. I think their manager was Slaven Jokanovic, and he did well to get them promoted, but this guy was clueless at the top level. I'm not sure if his formation. Forget the formation. I don't think this guy really, on the training field knew what he was doing at the top level because this team was really outplayed week in, week out. Um, and it might have something to do with the personnel because I know that, what's his name? The striker. Oh my god, I had it a second ago. What's his name? It's Mitrovic, that's it. I think Mitrovic is a good striker, but I don't think he's good enough to play at the top level. Like, those are my thoughts. People might disagree, but I don't think he's good enough. At championship level, he's good, but at Premier League level, he just doesn't do enough to really um he's just not good enough for the Premier League. Anyway, so yeah, this team was conceding goals like crazy. Obviously the manager got sacked as well, like the previous managers, and that really wasn't enough because this team didn't really improve much. So there we go. Obviously, all right. So number two, we have Sheffield United. What an awful season. Excuse me. What an awful season. Sheffield United took nearly half a season to win their first game, which is absolutely ridiculous. And the weird thing is that this team finished in the top 10 the previous season, so it's kind of like they finished seventh, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, how the hell do you go from finishing seventh to being able to struggle to win any games? Doesn't make any sense. And they only scored 20 goals for this season, which is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not sure how, even if your team is that bad, I'm not sure how you only managed to score 20 goals in the season. Um, Absolutely ridiculous. And somehow they managed to win 7 games. I'm not sure how they did though. At one point, they're on track to be the worst Premier League team of all time, but they dodged that bullet. And I think with Chris Wilder, I'm not sure what happened exactly. Maybe their first season they played really well and they called teams out with their formation, but in their second season they just got exposed massively, and Chris Wilder ran out of ideas because maybe the players, just didn't have what it took to be able to perform at the same level as they did the previous season. Not really sure what happened, but an awful, awful Premier League team. And the first spot is Huddersfield Town. I'm pretty sure maybe a lot of people would remember this team because they were absolutely awful. Oh, excuse me. See, they're so awful that my throat's starting to hurt. What a shocking Premier League team. 3 wins for the season. 3 Premier League wins. Absolutely ridiculous. 76 goals conceded. 16 points. I mean, this is so bad that I don't even know how they were in the Premier League in the first place. Now, they did stay out the previous season, which they did well too. Very, very well. But, when you're performing like this, you deserve to get relegated. And that's about it.